介绍一下今天的我们的主讲嘉宾，他的名字呢叫 Heather McCutchen， 他呢是达特茅斯学院的前申请审阅官，同时呢也是三个藤娃的妈妈。相信呢很多的今天来的各位的听众呢都对今天的这个演讲的主题呢非常非常的感兴趣，因为呢我们在孩子小的时候可能还不会意识到怎么样去给孩子打造一个比较很好的一个路径。那么今天的这位嘉宾呢就可以回答您的问题。在讲座的过程中呢，希望大家静音，如果有问题可以打在 chat 里面，然后会后呢我们会有答疑的环节。 Alright, okay, so good evening everyone. So tonight we're very, very honored to have Heather McCutchen to give us the speech. And Heather, please introduce yourself and the mic is yours. Let me stop share.
Thank you so much. So I'm very happy to speak with all of you tonight about really helping your children find their interests and become the kinds of people that colleges want to accept. I've been working in admissions for over 30 years, so I have a lot of experience. I've read thousands of applications, but maybe just as important, I'm a mother of 3 children who have all gone through this process. My 2 oldest daughters both went to Dartmouth like I did. My oldest daughter then went on to Harvard graduate school. My second daughter is about to finish law school at Boston University. And my youngest is my son, and he is a first-year student at Yale. So each of them had different interests. And for each of them, I went through many of the same steps that I'm going to talk about tonight. So I feel very happy to share this conversation with you. We're going to first start just by talking about what interest exploration is and why it's important. So as most of you will know, when you go to college, you have a major. A major is kind of the focus of your education. Typically speaking, it's about 1/3 of the classes that you take in college. So it's not all the classes, it's usually about 1/3 of the classes. Some colleges require that you say what your major will be when you apply. And some colleges don't require it, but they give you an option to express what your major might be. It's really important to take that opportunity to show an interest. And interest exploration is the process of figuring out what that interest is, so that by the time your child is applying to college, they know what major they want to put in that box. Even though they may change their mind during college, it's okay to change your major. They need to have an indication when they apply of the direction of their interests. So through interest exploration, we figure out what that thing is that they're going to become accomplished and knowledgeable in, that they're going to be able to write about in essays and talk about in their interviews. Interest exploration gives a great foundation for their learning. It helps create kind of a direction for the courses that they should choose, both in high school and outside of school. Interest exploration prepares them for really strong extracurricular choices when they get to high school. So they'll have an idea of the kinds of clubs they want to join, the kinds of things where they hope to have leadership. Leadership and confidence in speaking doesn't just magically happen when kids start high school. And these are skills that can be developed even in pretty young children. Having experience with leadership and autonomy can really prepare them to step into those roles when they get to high school. So interest exploration really is good for all students. It's good for the students who don't think they have any interest. The parents will say they're not interested in anything. We can always find what they are interested in. Sometimes it's a long conversation or process, but we always find it. It helps the students who have too many interests, because if they have so many interests that they don't have time to go deeply into any one interest, it's difficult for their application to really stand out and be meaningful. So in their case, we're helping them narrow down their interest and choose the ones that are going to be the most successful for them. And it helps students who've already decided they have a passion, they know what their interest is, but we can help them through interest exploration take that another step. So for instance, a student who says, my interest is history, well, that's a very broad topic. Through interest exploration, we can narrow that down. Is it modern history or ancient history or history of cities or history of farming? Like, there's so many ways that we can further narrow down their interest to make it even more impactful. This checklist is an example of the way that we kind of help a student who has no clear interest. So I don't know if you can see all the things on this list, but it's basically trying to figure out how students like to spend their time. So they check off the things that they would enjoy doing, because the bottom line is, if for something to be an interest, it has to be something they like. It doesn't do any good for me to pick an interest for them, or even for you to pick an interest for your own child. It has to be something that really evolves from them, from their personality, from their experiences, from their curiosity. So we need a conversation and an engagement with them to help figure out which things they would prefer for how to spend their time. We'll have much better luck after that conversation. Here's some just basic topic questions to ask. I always ask my students, well, what do you do in your free time? If you have a Saturday morning and you have no classes to go to and no family obligations, what would you like to do with your time? And then I ask, what are the topics you feel excited about? If you got a magazine in the mail, which stories would you want to read? What would they be about? What are you willing to give up your rest time to do, right? Instead of taking a nap, instead of just watching TV, what would make you get up to do something? What are you curious about? What is something you want to learn more about? And we talk about goals. Kind of, how do you see your future? Where do you hope to get someday? How do you see yourself thriving in the future? And then we can talk about the steps you need to get there. So interest exploration kind of often starts with students who have no clear interest. It starts with just brainstorming, filling out surveys like we just saw, having a counselor like myself just bounce ideas off of them and see which ones interest them and catch their attention. And then we'll try some of those out. I come up with kind of entry-level ideas and projects, assignments for students. That might be, signing up for a newsletter about a certain topic, and just reading some of those articles. If you have way too many interests, we start to dig in a little deeper through all the different media sources to learn more about these interests and see which ones really have staying power. We look at an interest from all different sides, from ways to learn more about it, from ways to volunteer with an existing kind of community organization or online organization. We check if your student's school has a club that relates to one of their interests. We introduce students to professionals or scholars. We suggest that they write. Always, writing is going to be an important skill. So writing in a personal journal is a great first step, and then potentially moving on towards writing that might be published somewhere. Students who want to go deeper into an area that they've already identified, we'll suggest that they apply for a summer program, dedicate their summer time to advancing that interest. Even more impressive is a self-directed project. So for instance, my son's interest is theater. And at a certain point, instead of having him participate in a summer theater program, he created his own and applied for funding and developed his own summer program. So that's the kind of thing that I encourage my students to do. We connect them with scholars to join research projects. We talk about combining interests. We'll talk about that more throughout this presentation, but I do think that that's really a key step in the process. Once you've identified what your main interests are, finding ways to bring them together. I haven't yet had a student come up with interests that I couldn't connect. I think that all interests can be connected one way or another. And showing commitment through sustained involvement, right? If this is your interest, it should start early in high school and it should continue throughout high school. So now we're going to talk about how to take what you're interested in and turn it into activities or achievements. We call this codification. To codify something is to make it tangible and something that you can share with others. So I always say, for an example, if you say, I like to draw, that's just saying an interest. Anyone can say that. If you say, I spend 6 hours a week in the art studio and I've completed this portfolio and I've studied these different art skills, that's codification. You can point to those things that demonstrate your love of drawing, not just expressing something you like. So goals for every activity really are to find ways to have leadership, to have impact. In fact, the dean of admissions at Dartmouth once told me if he had to sum up what he looks for in a student with one word, the word would be impact. Do they impact their family, their school, their community, the world? Students who have impact do well in the admissions process. Sustained involvement, again, in admissions, we had some tag phrases for students who started all their clubs in 11th grade. We would say, oh, it's a junior joiner, someone who didn't participate in activities until college applications are around the corner. So you don't want to be a junior joiner. You want to start things early. And having a common theme, finding connections between your interests so that when you put them together, you kind of come up with a unique persona. This is a little flow chart about how you kind of decide which interest you're going to continue. So as we start to explore interests, we'll do a bunch of mini projects. In this example, there are 4 different mini projects. I worked with a student once who liked every academic subject. So she did a mini project in writing. She did a mini project in biology. She did a mini project in choreography and dance. And she did a mini project in government, politics, and debate. At the end of that first year of exploration, we discontinued 2 of those interests. It doesn't mean she can never decide to be a writer, but we were no longer going to focus her interests and her time on writing. So we took that out of her schedule, but she decided she wanted to continue with biology and with dance. So those were the 2 that we did a growing project for. And then we found a fusion between the 2 and completed a grand project looking at the biology of dancers and their strength, their muscle systems, their feet. She did kind of a biological survey of what dancers achieve with their bodies. So we brought them together in this really interesting way where she did her research and was able to speak really knowledgeably about her interests by the end. So for codifying experiences, again, it's turning an interest or a hobby into something that admissions officers will value. These examples, if you like fitness, that's great. Why don't you become a personal trainer or certify yourself to be an aerobics instructor or a yoga instructor? If you love to write, don't keep it to yourself, share it, publish it online, or submit it to, commercial publishers. If you love finance, start investing. You can invest in very small amounts and write about what you learn from the experience. If you're interested in business, start one. Be able to talk about what worked and what didn't work. Pretty much any interest or hobby can become the thing that admissions officers will value. So we have had students with some very unusual hobbies that ended up doing really terrific things. We had a student once who collected sneakers. He loved the, rare edition sneakers. And we got him an internship with one of the top sneaker companies, and he learned about the design and the technology involved. And it became a really great part of his story and his application. So pretty much any hobby or collection, or it can be the thing that turns the key into unlocking how to tell someone's story. So I just want you all to remember that these things take a lot of time. And, if I meet a student at the end of 11th grade and they're about to apply to college, there's no time to go through this process. The earlier, the better. It becomes a really natural evolution for a student to really spend some time thinking about what they enjoy, what makes them excited, so that by the time they apply to college, they have really taken many small steps. Sometimes when I talk to a student in 8th or 9th grade and we start dreaming big about what they might do by 12th grade, they think it's impossible. But we don't do it all at once. We do it in many small steps. And, if they take those steps reliably throughout high school, by the end, they can do something that's so impressive that no matter who you talk to, when you tell them about your project, they should say, wow, that's impressive. That's our goal. So we're going to look at kind of how to make these plans and a couple of case studies from some of our actual students. One of them is one that I actually worked with myself. So a quick true false for you. Admissions officers care more about your involvement in an activity than they do about the category of the activity itself. So is it true that they care more about your involvement, what you do, than they do about the thing it is that you're involved in? That makes sense. So if you want to put a true or a false in the chat, I see a true. True. Looks like you guys are paying attention. Thank you very much. Yes, that's definitely true. And I think it's great that so many of you already know this, because I've worked with many parents who don't know this, right? They think everyone has to do debate. Debate sounds impressive. Well, debate is only impressive if you're really engaged and involved and enjoying it, right? So it's what you do and how you're engaged that matters. I had a student once who was on the basketball team, but she was terrible at basketball. She hated basketball. She never got in the game. She always sat on the bench. But her father insisted she had to stay on the basketball team because he wanted her to have a sport listed on her applications. And what I had to explain is that doesn't matter, because she's not achieving interesting things with basketball. She's not a leader in basketball. She's not excelling. It'd be much better for her to use that time for something she will get involved in. So that's a really important thing for families to understand. This is an example from Harvard. So every school has a different exact method of how they evaluate extracurricular activities. Harvard uses a 1 to 6 point scale where you want a lower score. Harvard is like golf. A low score is better. At Dartmouth, for instance, it's the opposite. You want a high score. So every school will have a different system. But when Harvard looks at the extracurriculars in an application, and in the Common App, for instance, you can list 10 extracurricular activities. So if they say in one or more areas, you have achieved at a national or even international or professional level, that would get you a 1. That's very rare. To get a 2 would be to have impact in your school as a great leader or local or regional accomplishment or recognition. So usually it's not just within the school, usually it's expanding your impact beyond school to get a 2. If you participate, but no great leadership, no great awards, that would get you a 3. 3 is kind of an average student, somebody who does good. They're doing good things, but nothing too exciting. And then down from there. So your participation level matters. Just being in the chess club doesn't make any difference to your application. What matters is if you organize a chess tournament, teachers versus students, or you go to the elementary school and start a chess club and teach them chess. Those kinds of participation steps will make a big difference in the ranking that you receive from colleges. And that will give you an advantage in the process. So this is an example kind of year by year of taking advantage of extracurriculars at your high school. So in 9th grade, you want to join lots of clubs. Anything that interests you, you should try it, right? 9th grade is to explore. So joining a variety of clubs, reading poetry and fiction, going to a business camp, playing soccer, lots of different interests. By 10th grade, start to narrow that down. So you see by 10th grade, the business interest has gone, but there's a lot of different kinds of writing poetry, writing music, a writing club that they start at school, continuing to play soccer. By 11th grade, they're growing the club. They're doing more serious songwriting. They're starting to publish their poetry. They've become an English tutor to show that they help others, care about others. Competitive summer program in writing, still playing soccer. 12th grade, you'll see each of those activities has taken off, significant accomplishments with publication and competitions, and still playing soccer. So I like that they continued the soccer all the way through. I want to just point that out because having a focus and having an interest that you're passionate about doesn't mean that has to be the only thing you do. It is okay for there to be other things that don't fit your persona too. Colleges know every student is a complex person with multiple levels of interest. My son that I talked about a minute ago, who was interested in theater, he was also a baker. He's a certified baker, and he had his own bakery. So that was still on his activity list, even though it really had nothing to do with his other activities. So I want to talk a little bit about middle schoolers, because it's never really too early just to think about some of the steps we're talking about. So it's really great if students are able to try lots of things before they start high school. So all kinds of enrichment programs, like we saw in the video from PiPa before we started, we saw so many examples of enrichment opportunities, right? So you can expose your child to many things to figure out kind of what makes them excited, what clicks in their mind. It might not be what you expected or want it to be, but watch them and listen to them and follow them. My example for this is always my middle daughter asked us to give her figure skating lessons from the time she was, I don't know, 2nd grade. And we just ignored her because none of us know how to skate. And we thought, that's a lot of trouble. She can do other things. And she kept asking and asking. Finally, we got her a coach and got her into skating really much later than we should have. And it became a great activity for her. She continued to skate. It became something really important in her applications. But we had to listen. We had to tune into what she was saying. So I think that that's important in those early grades. Colleges do appreciate students who are ambitious and achieve some goals or set high goals for themselves. And we see that most in students who start figuring out what they want to do early on. And if you spend some time in middle school figuring out what you're good at and starting to work on some projects, figuring out what you really enjoy, you enter high school with this strong foundation, ready to be a leader or start a club or get really involved right off the bat. Now we're going to look at a couple of case studies. Student I started with us in 9th grade. So just some basic facts. You'll see they're the top 10% of their class. Their SAT testing 1480 is a super score. That means their highest scores came from 2 different tests put together. A couple of AP scores. Area of interest is social science and international relations, political science, news media. So when the student joined, he has just too many interests, no clear direction, well-rounded, but no one area where we could say this is what they're passionate about. They ranked in the top 10%. That's good. That's a good student, but it's not good enough for those top 10 high school, top 10 colleges in the US. So the former admissions officer working with this student made lists of strengths and weaknesses to help them set goals for how they were going to work on improving their profile and their accomplishments before they apply to college. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses, Ingenious made a roadmap, kind of looking over the course of years, the amount of time we had with that student. Fortunately, with this student, we had several years to develop really impressive things, to take their extracurricular activities and set ambitious goals with a timetable to help them follow it. We paired this student with an academic writing mentor and a university professor of journalism. They did research into studying the role of the media in Iran during the revolution. So this was very specific kind of reading, writing, research that helped develop the interest in journalism and political science in a way that's very detailed and unique for a high school student. Very impressive. So this is an outline of the academic mentorship, including comments from the instructor of the writing class here. So the mentors, the scholars that our students work with, they always get a letter at the end with comments. Sometimes the people that they do these mentorships with will become even extra recommender for college. So through that project, the student founded a youth journalism and literature project to teach his interest in news media to middle school students. So this is that impact piece, showing that he cares about others, that he wants to share his enthusiasm for his topic with others. So it really gets at what admissions officers are looking for. And this project ended up right at the top of his activity list when he applied to college. And that's how it looks on the Common App right there. So in his essay, we looked at combining a lot of his interests and personal characteristics. So we decided that we would share his story with colleges with this frame, that he's an aspiring political leader and historian, passionate about journalism and promoting community development. So that sentence is not something that we write in the application or that the student includes in the application. It's like what we keep in mind, what we ask the student to keep in mind as they work on their application. It's going to be the focus. I think of an application as like a snapshot, like we take a great picture of the student, but it's just one angle, one image. It's not going to show the back of their head or their profile. It's just one picture. So the focus, the way we focus is this kind of description. When the students did their first draft of the essay, they got feedback from counselors, and then they repeated that process. I think we can see some of the editing on the next slide. Yeah, here. So the Ingenious counselor will go through and make suggestions of things to cut, repetition, as well as the things that are highlighted. The student would get comments about, questions about, and in my experience, the typical essay for college goes through about 10 rounds of this, 10 different drafts, to really make sure the student is telling their story in the best way. In that activity list that we keep mentioning, a lot of students think, oh, it's just a list. I don't need help with that. Honestly, I think it's the most important part of the application. When I was reading applications for Dartmouth, that was where I started every time, was with the activity list, because you get such a strong sense of the person when you read how they spend their time. And if you put together all of the little descriptions of activities, it's just as long as your essay. So here's a sample from the Common App for those of you who haven't looked at a college application before. So we talked to the student about how to really use every little word space that they have in the activity list. They count by character and space, not by word. Actually, it's by letter and character. So it's very small spaces, and it's hard to say something meaningful and interesting in a very small space. So this takes a lot of time. We talk about the order that we're going to list these activities, and we like to make sure the things at the top are the most impressive. I like to end number 10 with something a little kind of quirky or unexpected. If you have a really boring activity, I like to put it at number 9. Like, we have our strategies of how to kind of shape the list to make it the most effective that it can be. And you'll see as you look down this, the headings like journalism, publications, student government politics, work, student government politics. Each activity, you have to choose a heading from a drop-down menu. That's another point where we get very involved helping the student decide which heading to choose, because a lot of activities could be classified as in more than one way. So that heading creates like an outline of your list that you want to have it help tell a story as well. And happy ending, that student was accepted to Northwestern, a wonderful competitive university. Student E, who also started with us in 9th grade, this is one of my students. A Canadian student at a private high school, very good GPA, good SAT testing, 2 AP tests with an interest in creative writing. So for extracurricular activities, she was editor of the newspaper and had started an Asian cultural club. She was also a talented dancer and choreographer, and she had published some of her original fiction. So we decided to try to combine some of these interests and make them more unique. There's so many high school students who like creative writing, but we decided that if we merged her writing with dance and her interest in Asian culture, it would be something really special. I think that that was such a great choice for this student. She was excited about the project, and it really took off. We also wanted her to apply to some very competitive writing programs, and she was accepted at the University of Iowa. And we wanted her to complete her novel and submit it for publication. So that, again, was just another really significant accomplishment for a high school student to finish a full-length novel. This is an example of kind of roadmap goals, the kind of notes that we write up after each meeting, showing the things that we want a student to do before the next meeting. So again, guiding through essay writing. The essay writing was about how her love for creative writing was a tool for her to connect with others and to speak up for the Asian American community. We really spent a lot of time being strategic about her school list. So we wanted a competitive school for her to apply to for sure, but we wanted a place with a very strong creative writing department, a liberal arts atmosphere. We wanted them to have a dance program. We wanted her story to make sense to the college as far as why she would be interested in going there. Brown University met all of these criteria, so that was her early decision choice. And happy ending, she was admitted to Brown early decision. So I think now, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and I'll get ready to answer some of those while we share a little bit more about Ingenious and our services with you.
Sure. I'll be sharing some information about Ingenious Yinzhi, while parents can put your comments, question in the chat box. 可以在chat box 里面打出你们的问题，然后待会儿我们的host 会帮可以翻译可以打中文或者英文。好，
we have
yeah.
sorry.
您说。
I'm just saying there's a question asking about okay, you can do yours first.
Yeah. I'll give parents a little more time. 家长们可以慢慢的打出他们的问题。首先引知我们会有150名以上的名校前招生官团队，就像 Heather 一样，他们是 Formal Admission Officer。他们有丰富的在名校审阅过材料的经验。然后我们有来自基本上美国Top 前30所有学校的前招生官，然后他们了解每一个学校的文化，他们的一些偏好等等。然后另外我们还有75名的名校的升学顾问，他们会在孩子的申请阶段对文书做非常详细的修改，然后在课外活动规划的时候，他们也会手把手的帮孩子一起，比如说从怎么创立一个社团到把它发展壮大等等。我们还有与多名超过75名的教授学者做研究。刚刚提到的2个 case 里面的学生们，他们都有进行科研项目，就是能与教授或者学者一起就一个大的他们感兴趣的人文、商科或者科学的方向做一个属于自己的 research paper， 最后是有大概率能够得到发表的。我们引知一直强调的是1对1的精品服务，您会有专业的顾问、前招生官和升学顾问来帮助您的孩子，并且有强大的我们的顾问咨询团队，能够了解超过不止1所学校多所名校的强大的关于申请方面的偏好，他们的该如何从早期、后期完善的进行准备。最后给大家看一下我们今年早申阶段的录取结果，因为现在的常规的结果还在陆续发放当中。在早申阶段，我们就有了有超过58枚的藤校和美国前10大学的录取。前30名的大学中，我们有80封的 offer， 然后前50的大学我们已经有了110以上的录取。这是我们在2022年的录取结果。今年的结果在早申阶段就已经几乎快要超过了我们去年的整1年的申请结果，所以大家可以期待一下，等常规的所有的结果出来之后，我们会有怎么样的丰富的数字。这里可以看到2023年具体早申的录取的学校以及数量。像刚刚看到评论区里有很多在问关于理工科方向的，麻省理工我们今年的早申阶段就有9个录取，哈佛大学2个，斯坦福1个，我们还在等待更多的常规的 regular decision 的application 的一些结果。这是去年的关于从排名来看的我们拿到的所有的 offer。好，给大家简短的过一下。当然希望您的孩子以后也能够收获到他们心仪的名校的录取。好，最后我就停在这一页，是我们小枇杷和引知的我们联合的一个教育微信群，大家可以扫码进入关注我们 小枇杷杂志以及引知关于教育方向的任何的动态。
Okay, so there's a question asking you, Heather, how to find academic prowess during middle school, especially science.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in middle school is when you start to see the specialties, right? Like what a student is particularly drawn to or excited about. And I think just paying attention to that, listening to them when they tell you what kinds of activities they'd like to do and supporting those interests. Science activities, there's so many supplemental activities available now. I remember I signed my daughter up for a course in, I told her it was a course in animals, but really it was about dissecting animals, and they dissected, I think, 12 different animals during the course. She was not too happy with me when she found out what it was, but in the end, she really got a lot out of this class because it was very hands-on. I think things that are hands-on for middle school students is a great way to keep them interested and engaged. Just make sure that you're not pushing something so hard that that they burn out, right? You want the activities to really be fun for them in middle school.
Okay, and there's this question. Ethan asked, any suggestions for elementary schoolers?
Sure, yeah. So I mean, I think it's really just more of the same, but keep things on kind of a play level, right? Keep things very light and fun. Look for opportunities in your community, at your library, where they can go in and try something, learn about something in a very light and casual way. I wouldn't really steer an elementary student too hard in any one direction, because you don't want to block out anything that might become their interest over the next couple of years.
Okay. And there's a question asking any recommendations for homeschool students. Wow. Yeah, that's a good question.
So actually, I homeschooled all three of my kids.
Oh, wow.
For middle school. So yeah, so they went to elementary school in the public school system, and then I took them home and homeschooled them for middle school, and then they went back for high school. So my experience with homeschooling was extremely positive. I set certain expectations about academic material that kind of was linear, like math and foreign language, right? It has to progress in a certain way. But other things, I just followed their interests. This was the time when I signed my daughter up for that animal dissection class. Just looking for unique opportunities. Homeschool students have so much flexibility. We found great ways to partner with a local university, professors who were interested in sharing their passion with students. We teamed up into small groups with other students who had similar interests in what to explore. We would do our own field trips, lots of time at museums. There's so many different ways to kind of take a homeschooled student who has all the flexibility of their schedule and expose them to many, many things and see what resonates the most with them.
Okay. Megan asked, is it too late for an 11th grader to start a new club at school?
No, it's never too late. It would be great if that club was in an interest that they had shown in other ways before 11th grade. At a lot of schools, it's hard to start a new club, especially for an underclassman. Many high schools, it would be 11th grade before you really have the standing to start a club. But hopefully the thing you're starting your club in is something that you've been exploring on your own, and you can have, it doesn't just come out of the blue. All of a sudden you start a pottery club, even though you've never done any pottery or something. That would be harder to explain. But definitely encourage your 11th grader, if they have an interest that isn't already kind of manifested at their high school, to go for it.
This question asks, can you share the PowerPoint slides after the Zoom? Yeah, okay, yeah, that's for sure. All right. And this one for second grade, I think you just answered, yeah, for elementary school students. Yeah.
This comment looks like the kid is very advanced and already targeted on technology. Sometimes this does happen. I'm a published writer, playwright, and a novelist. I first announced that I was a writer when I was 8 years old. So, sometimes even at a very young age, the kids do know what their passion is. And in that case, I would just say, provide the opportunities for them to continue to explore. Maybe find an older kid, a middle school kid or a high school kid who wants, is working on their college applications, who could be a mentor for your student, who could come in and teach extra classes or help talk to them about more advanced things that they're learning.
That's a good idea. This one says, which grade will the mini project start, and how much commitment will it take to for the mini projects? Yeah.
So at Ingenious, we take every student where they are, right? So whatever their age, whatever their interest expression already is, that's a hard question to answer because it will depend on the individual student, how much they're ready to focus, how much they're already focused. But in general, we always say, like, school is the #1 priority. The grades in school are the most important thing. So we will come up with mini projects and we will help with time management, but ultimately the mini projects can't take so much time that the grades start to suffer. So that's always a balance.
All right, and how do music and sports add value to students' college application? And this parent's son, he's not planning to study music nor after, and not after sport, scholarship. So,
in any of these cases, like it comes down to, do they enjoy it, right? If they love the sport and they're getting a lot of satisfaction from it and it's giving them good exercise and stress relief and friendship, that's a great activity to continue. And colleges do value the teamwork and goal setting and commitment level of athletes, even if they're not going to be recruited. But don't stick with a sport or force someone to stick with a sport just because you think they should. I did not have a sport. 2 of my 3 children did not have sports. It's not a criteria that has to be there. So it's great if they love it. If they don't love it, pick other things. And similarly with music, the other possibility is to scale back, right? So if your student is playing the piano 12 hours a week, but they really want to be a scientist, maybe they scale back. Maybe they take fewer piano lessons. They don't do competitions anymore. They play the piano 2 or 3 hours a week. They don't have to give it up. It doesn't have to come off their list, but they'll free up more time to pursue what they're really planning to study.
So the examples that you gave is probably is mainly about like social science related. And some parents ask, can you give an example of like STEM focused or like math, things like coding?
So, of the 2 case studies we did, one was social science and one was humanities. The other major division would be STEM. I work with lots of STEM students. We certainly encourage them to get involved in hands-on opportunities, especially over the summer and during breaks, to reach out to other scientists who might let them come into the lab as some kind of an assistant or apprentice. We have many students who are very involved in science competitions, STEM and math competitions. Again, that's an area where I would say if the student enjoys it, it's terrific. If the student is stressed out by it, it's not essential. So really listening to your child and figuring out the level of interest in the direction. The other thing I think is a great way to explore science more casually in middle school is watching science documentaries together. You can watch a documentary about a scientist and, see if it gets them excited, their imagination going. They want to learn more about that kind of science. It can help point you in a direction.
Okay. This question asks you, when will consultants start working with students, like in middle school or in high school?
Yeah, we do start in middle school. Again, it just depends on the individual student. My kids like to say that I started with them when they were in preschool. I don't know if that's really true, but I think it's a process. We take each student where they are. I think in some ways the sooner the better, because we can just help support, give them kind of extra enthusiasm and brainstorming and ideas, and help make some of the decisions about how to use their time, what courses to take. I think it's a really useful service. The sooner the better.
Okay. This question from Lily asks you, is reward from national competition considered the highest, like one according to Harvard University? I think, yeah, you just mentioned, right? That's one, right?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on it, right? So for instance, for like a dance competition, there's so many that call themselves a national competition. So I think that it depends on really the selectiveness of the competition and the impact of the competition, how many people were competing. In any field, that's the case. Debate, that's the case, right? There's so many different circuits of debate. So national, international, I think to reach that one is really very, very rare. And it either has to be a national level that is very clear cut that this is the ultimate national point, or it's an international recognition. I like to sometimes say that that best ranking is like for the Olympic athletes and the Broadway stars. It's really, really, really top of their field.
Okay. This question is it true that schools have certain bias towards applicants with Asian or Chinese backgrounds? How could the applicants break these stereotypes?
So I think that most colleges really try their best to control bias. Mm-hmm. I know that at the schools where I've worked, all of the admissions counselors are put through significant training to identify what their personal biases are and to help them acknowledge and avoid them as they read applications. So I think I'm not denying that this happens, but I think that it is not an organized official policy anywhere, right? The colleges really do want to be open-minded when they read applications, and they try very hard to be fair in a process that is inherently very problematic. It's a really, really, really terrible process, and we just do our best to try to make it fair for the students. I think each kid, can't worry about these larger like social issues affecting their application. I think they just have to pursue their own interests and worry about themselves and how to share who they are with colleges in the fullest possible way.
Okay. This parent's child is in 9th grade and is interested in law. So they're asking, besides the debate, what type of activities she needs to build up?
So things that you really need to be a great law student, you need to be a terrific reader. So just reading lots of things, particularly, I think, current events, doing a lot of reading of nonfiction, not just literature and fiction, and a lot of writing. So writing for a school newspaper, writing for a website, creating your own journal or blog. That kind of writing is really good. And I think like logic is a really important skill for law school. So logic activities and logic games are something that even like a 9th or 10th grader might really enjoy.
This parent, Rachel Fan, asked how many counselors will work with one student? Is it like?
Yeah, so it depends on the student's package. There, you have to, if you call and talk, you can have a consultation and hear about the different packages. Sometimes there are 2 counselors, sometimes there's 1 counselor. It depends on the package.
Yeah, I can talk about that package and our specific service details in the WeChat group. 因为时间的关系，有很多家长他有一些比较专业的跟孩子的兴趣相关的，我们都可以在群里面再仔细的探讨，然后包括引知的服务等等。
Great. This one. Hold on, let me see this question. 参加学校体育校队. So Cindy asked if you're just in a school sports team, if you're just on the team, is it gonna help with the application? So you're not like
you're not the captain or the
yeah, like
again, it's not going to be the thing that gets you in, but colleges do appreciate the commitment and the teamwork. So again, if you enjoy it, it may be worth that time commitment. It's not something you have to do. So if you don't enjoy it and you're not particularly good at it, you might ask yourself that question, if it's worth the amount of time that you're putting into it.
Oh, but is it gonna make your GPA lower? Because she said it will make your GPA lower.
Because of the time commitment to the sport? Is that what she means?
I'm not really sure. Cindy, if you can just ask the question yourself. I'm not really sure why if you're on the school sports team, it will get your GPA lower.
Yeah. I mean, sports take a lot of time. So,
yeah, that I know. Yeah.
Again, GPA is the most important piece. Like taking challenging classes and doing well in them is the most important thing. So any activity that is going to take away from your ability to get really good grades is going to be a problem. And students should work with somebody to talk about time management and study skills and making priorities of their time.
Okay. All right, so the last question, what are counted as contributions to communities? Heard that now universities are looking for activities to help communities at low economic status. Is that true? And the student have to be a leader in a club or show leader? Yeah, so yeah, if they're not leaders in the club, what would be the definition of leadership? Okay.
Sure, so that's a couple of questions in one, but
yeah,
contributing to the community, I think, really is important. It's stepping outside the bubble of just the high school, I think, is what colleges care about. It's not, helping lower economic parts of the community is very important. That's a very worthy thing to do. It's not the only way to contribute to your community. But it's the idea that you don't just operate within your kind of comfort zone of your high school. It's that you step outside of that, you step outside of your neighborhood into an area where maybe you are less confident, and you challenge yourself to have an impact beyond what's really easy for you. I think that colleges really value that. Any activity can contribute to the community. There are always ways for an activity to contribute to the community. directly or indirectly. So that's something we work on with each of our students to figure out how their interests and their activities are going to contribute. And then the part about leadership, I mean, it's great to have a good title for each thing on your activity list. It's great to be a founder, to be the president, but if you don't have those titles, you can still create leadership opportunities for yourself by taking on roles within the club, running an event, running a fundraiser, and then you can focus in your description on those things, those areas where you took leadership opportunities, even if you don't have the title.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Thank you, Heather, for this great presentation. And if 大家如果有其他的问题，可以扫你面前的这个二维码，加入我们的这个讨论群在群里面呢会给大家解答更多的问题。好的，那么今晚的讲座呢就到此为止。谢谢大家的参与，我们下一次的讲座再见。好，谢谢大家。
你们会有回放吗？
应该是会有的，对，到时候请关注小枇杷的这个 YouTube 频道。
好的，谢谢。那你会把这个 link 发到群里面吗？就是如果有回放，
对，会发在群里。
好，谢谢。
不客气。
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for the great presentation, and hope you all have a great night. 谢谢家长们。
Bye, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.